On Tuesday, the 8th of August 1643, several hundred women, babes in arms and children at their feet, gathered outside the Houses of Parliament to protest for peace. The Commons had just rejected a proposal by the House of Lords to reopen peace talks with the King. The demonstration, though, was peaceful, and after receiving some reassurances, the gathering dispersed. If Parliament thought that was the end of the matter, though, they were disappointed because the next day the women came back in even larger numbers. They were more organised, and they were wearing white ribbons in their hats as a symbol of the peace they demanded. What they wanted was a meeting with parliamentary leaders to formally present a petition which they called the Petition of Many Civilly Disposed Women. The newspaper, the Parliament Scout, for that week claimed that 5,000 to 6,000 women were involved in this second day of action, and reported that these women were comprised mainly of poor women whose husbands were away in the army. Their slain or imprisoned husbands, as the women chanted, were the ones paying the high price for a war not of their making. The Kingdom's Weekly Intelligencer, another newspaper, disparagingly reported that the women were a band of whores, bawds, oyster women, kitchen stuff women, beggar women, and the very scum of the suburbs. And so they could be ignored as women of little consequence. But of course this report conveniently overlooks the organised nature of this second day of action, and the authorities clearly suspected royalist sympathisers of coordinating this day's demonstration. Around midday, the women surged at the doors of Parliament, blockading it and letting no MP pass in or out for over 2 hours. Sir William Wallace's horse regiment was called upon to suppress this, and one observer noted that there was much mischief done by the horse and foot soldiers, and this resulted in a number of fatalities and numerous injuries. One family's life was to change forever on that second day of protests. Watching events unfold from the doorstep of his shop just outside Westminster Gate was John Norman. He was a spectacle maker. He was on the side of Parliament and had been heard to say that he'd rather see the streets run with blood than that we should now have peace. So it's unsurprising that he wasn't concerned a bit when he heard the news that one of the protesters had been shot dead, saying that he really didn't care if 100 of them were so served. The person who'd been killed, the pretty young wench as she was described, was a seamstress in Westminster Hall, and first reports suggested that she'd been killed just going about her business, crossing the palace yard, running an errand, and she'd got nothing to do with the protest at all. In a terrible twist of fate, Norman, the spectacle maker, who'd been so callous in his reaction to this killing, was to discover that the young seamstress was none other than his own daughter. And what's even more shocking, it seems that the soldier whose claim of mischance was accepted by the authorities had a reputation as a profane fellow who bore an old grudge against Norman, and so had used the opportunity to murderously settle a score. The newspapers, though, seized on the apparent accident to apportion blame to the protesters to the women, not to the military. And the Intelligencer suggested that women in general should take this as a warning not to get caught up in such uprisings. The Parliament Scout blamed the death on the women themselves for uprising and suing for peace in the first place. Lots of people were arrested as a result of this unrest. Soldiers raided the homes of anyone linked to the events, however tenuously, and confiscated goods. The authorities wished to crack down on those involved as a warning to others. The protesters had been unsuccessful in suing for peace, and unbeknownst to them, the wars were to play out for the rest of that decade.